Wow, it's really exciting. We're starting now the last parak in Seder Nashim. It's really amazing. You know, we had a long journey through what is one of the more difficult Seders in Shas. I mean, if you think about it, Yevamis and Ksuvas, those were really challenging Masechtas. Gittin wasn't easy at all. Nedarim and Saita were pretty okay, as not so hard. And now this parak, this third parak of Kiddushin, was quite a hard parak. And now we're not finished it yet, but on this daf we're gonna start the last parak. It's interesting because we're learning now in the Mishnah Yomis, the last parak in Seder Moyed in Mishnah Yomis, the last parak of Chagiga, and we're learning the last parak of Kiddushin in Seder Nashim in the Daf Yomi. So it shows that we're really accomplishing. Like Bruce says, if I could be here every night, I would make sure to do so. It's just, Bruce has to try a little harder.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I have a question. Did we say that a Cohen it's okay to marry a non-virgin?
Not a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Gadol has to marry a virgin.
But how about a regular Cohen?
Regular Kohen can marry whoever he wants as long as she's not a divorcee.
Yeah, but a divorcee is a non-virgin also, Rabbi. What's the difference?
A big difference. Let's say she had a fling, not in marriage. Then he's allowed to marry her.
A widow also.
And a widow. Actually, a fling not in marriage is not so simple. That's not so simple. But a widow, he's allowed to marry. Now, says the Mishnah, we're holding way ahead.
Sorry, Rabbi, before we start the Mishnah, can I ask a question? Does it matter if the child is the product of an Evet Kanani or an Evet Ivri? Regarding the owner wanting to keep the child.
The Evet Kanani is married to who?
Okay, now we're talking about that he wants to free marry and keep the child. So does it matter if the father of that child was one of his other Evet, an Evet Kanani, or if it was an Evet?
No.
Doesn't
The same achlokes would apply.
Okay, thank you.
Now, says the Mishnah, Reb Tarfinam Aimer. Now this is an amazing thing because usually Mamzer is Ador Asiri Lo Yavai Mamzer B'Kara Hashem Ad Olam. Mamzer is for all the generations. However, Reb Tarfin Aimer, Reb Tarfin says an ingenious thing, Yechaylin Mamzerim Litar. A Mamzer could become tar. Ketzad. How? Mamzer Shenasa Shifcha. If a mamzer marries a shifcha, remember we said the vlad is like her. So then it loses its status of a mamzer, it becomes an evet. Mamzer Shenasa Shifcha, havlad evet. And then if shecharai, and then if the master frees the child, nimsa ben chayrin, then it's a regular Yisrael without any taint of mamzeris. Now, of course, you would have to figure out a way to free him, because there's a mitzvah saseh of la'ilam b'hem tavaydu. You're not allowed to free him. But there could be a situation, like we learned in other mesechtas, where there's only 9 people in the minyan, and you come down to the Aguda by the 8 o'clock minyan on Sunday, and there's only 9 people, and so he frees the evet. And then you just presto, you just made out of a mamzer's child a ben chayrin. Says the Gemara, Rebbe Eliezer disagrees. Rebbe Eliezer says if a mamzer marries a shivcha, the child is an evet mamzer. Rebbe Eliezer marries an evet mamzer. It gets both deficiencies. It's an Eved because it's born from a Shifcha, and it's a Mamzer because it's born from a Mamzer. Now, the question is Rabbi Tarfon allowing this l'chatchila? Is Rabbi Tarfon allowing a Mamzer to marry a Shifcha? Remember, Israel is not allowed to marry a Shifcha. Like we said, it's an Amadoim l'chamor. So, Ibayalu, Rabbi Tarfon l'chatchila kamar, is he saying it l'chatchila that a Mamzer is allowed to marry a Shifcha? Eved kamar, or is he saying if this should happen? Tajma, Amrullah, the Rabbi Tarfon, Tiarta es haschara. You have cleansed males. Because if the male is a mamzer, what he'll do is he'll go to a place that he's not known, and they won't know who he is, and he'll pass himself as an Eved, and he'll marry a Shifcha. However, v'lo tiarta es in the caves. You won't be a matar in the cave. Because if she's a mamzeris, it's not the way of a woman, especially in the olden days where women were more tznuah, it's not the way for her to go somewhere else and masquerade as a shifcha, that she should marry an Eved. But if this is allowed, so then they don't have to masquerade. So mamzeris nami tins of lavda. Let a mamzeris marry an Eved, and the child will be an Eved. Says the Gemara, no. It'll never follow the father, because Eved ain't loichias. An Eved does not have any pedigree. And therefore, if a mamzeris marries an Eved, the child will be like her, a mamzer, and not an Eved. So still we're trying to figure out if this is l'chatchila for a mamzer to marry a shifcha. So Tajma, Dushpezichne de Rav Samloi, the host of Rav Samloi, mamzer happened. He was a mamzer. The Amalei, so Rav Samloi told him, if you would have got to me earlier, tiar sinu libneich, I would have been matar your son. Because I would have told you to marry a shifcha, and then your son would have been an Eved. But if it's the Eved, mine no. He would have told him to become a thief. He would have told him to become a thief, and he won't have money to pay, so they'll sell him as an Eved. And when they sell him as an Eved, and he's also a mamzer, so then he'll marry a shifcha, because then he'll be allowed, because an Eved Ivri is allowed to marry shifcha. The mints of lay eitz of amalei zil genoiv, go and steal, viz daven be'Eved Ivri. So the Gemara says, now the Rishonim asked, the whole point was to say that if it's b'di Eved, how could he give him the advice? How could he give him advice to steal? So some learn that it would be allowed for him to steal and go through the charade if the victim gives him permission in order to be matar. So there would be maybe a possibility where it would be allowed. Says Gemara, but that can't be what he meant, because in the lifetime of Rav Simlai, there wasn't an Eved Ivri anymore. Or b'shnei Rav Simlai Eved Ivri miyave, there wasn't the din of selling somebody as an Eved Ivri, nimker bezdin, v'amamar ein Eved Ivri noyeg. The Eved Ivri is not this din of selling somebody as an Eved Ivri when he stole, is only bisman she'yovel noyeg, only when there's yovel. Elalav shmami no Reb Tarfon l'chatchila kama. Reb Tarfon meant that l'chatchila a mamzer would be able to marry an Eved, shmami no. Reb Yehuda Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Tarfon. The law is like Rabbi Tarfon. Rebbe Eliezer says, no, it won't help. If a mamzer marries a shifcha, the child will have both deficiencies. Harizeh Eved mamzer. So Amar Rebbe Eliezer, my time of the Rebbe Eliezer. What's the reason of Rebbe Eliezer? The Amakra, the pasuk says, Lo yavoy loy b'kal Hashem. So that loy is extra. The Amakra loy halach achar psuloi. that even if he marries a shivcha, we still follow his psul and say it has a din of an eved mamzer. Trying to figure out who's not muted here. Okay, now everybody is. And Eddie, we welcome your guest. It's nice to have you. Welcome. Says the Gemara, V'Rabbanan, what did Rabbanan do with the loy? Hahu b'Yisrael shenas mamzeres. It's just saying that if Yisrael marries a mamzeres, we don't say that we follow the father's paternity. L'mishpachoisam l'beis avoisam. We don't say that, but rather we say the child is a mamzer like the mother. So kedai t'chamina l'mishpachoisam l'beis avoisam ksiv. Asa loy apke. It follows the father. We follow the father. Normally, the child is a slave like the mother. That it's also a mamzer like the father. Rabban say it's different. By a shivcha, any fetus in the womb of a shivcha is like her, is just a slave. Kol vlad b'mei shivcha kananis, kevlad b'mei I behema dami. It's like the child in the womb of a cow or a donkey, and the child is completely like the mother, a shivcha or an eved, and not an eved mamzer. And halach is like Reb Tarfon, hadra lacha omer, hadra lacha omer, hadra nalach ha'omer. That was.
Isn't it Shivcha somewhat of a Yisra? Doesn't she have mitzvahs? I mean, we're talking about a Shivcha Kananis who...
She has mitzvahs, and Eliezer was a very great man, but he's Daim L'Chamar. Now...
Rabbi?
Yes.
Question, Rabbi. If my mother's Jewish, I'm Jewish, but why do I follow my father as far as being a Israel and not a Kohen?
That's what we said. That's what we said. Kol sheyesh Kiddushin ve'ein aveira, the Vlad goes after the father. So if your father's a Kohen, you're a Kohen. If your father's a Levi, you're a Levi. That was the first category in the Mishnah. Now, I want to welcome everyone. It's great to have 26 Zoomers learning with us. I also want to tell everybody that we want to grow. Remember, it says about Aaron, Oyev esabrius u'mekarvan l'Torah. He loved people and he was mekarv them to Torah. If you could get other people to start Daf Yomi, you know what you're giving them in this world and in the next world. I always like to say the story that we had in Staten Island. There was a man that Mel knows and Aaron knows and Irving knows. There was a man, George Hersko, in the Young Israel. And he used to play paddleball with us Monday night. I used to play paddleball Monday night in the Young Israel gym in between my two Daf Yomis. And it used to be with, you remember Mati, and Les, and Mark Rosenblum, Chaim Oizer-Preder, Oliver Shalom. And we were coming from my Daf, so while we were playing, we were talking about the Daf. What do you do when you play paddleball? Talk about the Daf. And George Hersko was playing with us, and after a bunch of nights, he says, what are you guys talking about? So they all said, why don't you come and try it? So he came, and he came again, and he came again. And he came 1,000 nights. And then he got Loyalenu pancreatic cancer. I remember I visited him in the hospital and he was telling me, yeah, I'm coming back soon. He passed away in 3 weeks. And after the Shiva, the family sent me a letter and they bought the Agudas of Staten Island a Art Scroll Shas. And they said they want to thank me that I sent their father to Olam Haba with 1,000 blot. And that's, nobody should get sick. But that's the exciting thing of getting somebody to join with us. Getting somebody. So everybody should take on it to work on one person, to get somebody to try to come. You know, everybody will be made that I work on people all the time. I badger them all the time. I badger people all the time. It's good to have you, Shimon, with us. Badger you that we need you every night. Okay. So Asora Yochasin Olum Abava. 10 genealogical categories went up with Ezra when the Golis Bavel ended. Kate Bavel, Zeru Bavel, Lekate Shivim Noishati. After 70 years, so they went up. Ezra brought from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael 10 different genealogical types. What were they? Kohanim, Levi, Yisraeli, Chalali. Chalal is the product of a forbidden Kohanic union, like an Alman L'Kayin Gadol, or a Grush V'Chalutz L'Kayin Hedyot. Geirei, converts. Charurei, freed slaves. Mamzerei, Mamzer is the child of a forbidden union of Koris or Mises Bezdin. Nesine, this is converts from the nation of the Gevinim, which were punished first by Yeshua, eventually by David HaMelech, that they couldn't marry into Klal Yisrael even if they converted. Shtuki is where you know the mother, but you don't know the father. And if the child calls somebody Abba, we silence him. And Asufi is a foundling, a child that you found, and you don't know who the father is or the mother is. These are the 10 types of genealogical categories that Ezra brought with him from Babel to Eretz Yisrael. So Kahanei Leviya v'Yisraelei mutar l'avei zeh b'zeh. Kahanim, Leviim, and Yisrael could marry one another. That's no problem. Leviya Yisraelei chalolei geirei v'charurei. A Levi Yisrael, a chalol, a convert, a freed slave, are all mutar l'avei zeh b'zeh. Geirei v'charurei, a convert, a freed slave. Mamzerei unesine, a mamzer and a ger nosen. Shtuki v'asufi, where you don't know the father, you don't know the father or the mother. Kulan mutarin lavei zeh b'zeh. They're all allowed to live with one another because our Mishnah holds that kahal gerim lo yikrei kahal, that the congregation of ger are not called kahal. It says lo yavoi b'kal Hashem. But a mamzer could marry a ger, can marry a freed slave. Now, why? A shtuki is a suffix mamzer. Why is a suffix mamzer allowed to marry a mamzer? So it says, Lo yavai mamzer b'kal Hashem, and we darshan, Lo yavai mamzer, you're not allowed to marry if you're a mamzer vadai. But if you're a mamzer suffix, you're allowed to marry. Now, why don't we worry about that the Sufi is a guy? So the Gemara will talk about it. Kulam mitaron lavei zeh b'zeh. Now, what's a shtuki? Ve'elu ein shtuki kol shu makaris ima. We know the mother. Ve'ein a makaris of it, and we don't know the father. And he's called a shtuki because if he says to somebody, "Daddy," we silence him. A Sufi kol shenesef min hashuk. He's gathered from the market. Ve'ena makar loyas aviv loyas imay. Abashala yekare l'shtuki beduki, the one who needs to be investigated, and we'll see what the halachic ramifications of this is much later on in the parak. Asari yuchsin alu mebavel. Now the Gemara says, "My area the tani alu mebavel." Why does it say they went up from Bavel? Nisne holchu Eretz Yisrael. They went to Eretz Yisrael. Says Gemara, "Oh, milsa agavurche kamashmalan kedetanya v'kamta v'alisa lamakam asher yivcha Hashem alikecha." You will get up and rise to the and go up to the place Asher Yivcha Hashem Alikecha. Malamed shebeis hamikdash gevaya mikol Eretz Yisrael. The Beis Hamikdash is higher than all of Eretz Yisrael. The Eretz Yisrael gevaya mikol haratzos, and Eretz Yisrael is higher than all the other lands. So the Gemara says, "Bishleim and Beis Hamikdash gevaya mikol Eretz Yisrael." Oh, that's what we said. Hainu dichsiv. That's why it says in the pasuk, "Divrei rivais bisharecha." Matters of quarrel in your gates, wherever you have quarrels in Eretz Yisrael, become to Valisa, and you will rise and go up. So wherever you are in Eretz Yisrael, if you have to go to the Sanhedrin in the Lishkas Hagazis, wherever you go, it's considered like you're going up. That we know. Ela Eretz Yisrael gevaya mikol haratzos minal. What does it mean? How do we know that Eretz Yisrael is higher than all the other lands? Dichsiv lachein hine yomim ba'im num Hashem. Days will come, says Hashem, mitz Hashem b'meher b'yameinu. Lo yomer oid chai Hashem asher heles b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. We won't say anymore, may Hashem live who brought us up from Mitzrayim. Ki im chai Hashem asher helev asher hevies b'nei Yisrael. That Hashem will bring us up and bring the Bnei Yisrael me'eretz Safain or mikol haratzos and all the lands asher hidaktim sham, that they're pushed there. So we see that wherever you are, you're going up. So that's why it says Asar Yichsin Olu, because wherever you are, you're going up. So the Gemara now asks, Mar Irya the Tani Olu Mebavel. It should say Asar Yichsin Olu LeEretz Yisrael. Nisnei Olu LeEretz Yisrael. No, it's coming to tell us that the purpose of bringing them was for Bavel's sake. When Ezra and Nehemiah were leaving to Eretz Yisrael, there was a worry that there would be no one to take care of the problems of Yuchasin, of forbidden relationships in Bavel. So therefore he brought all the problems with him. Says the Gemara, Messiah Leila Rebbe Lazar, the Amar Rebbe Lazar, Lo Allah Ezra Mebavel Acha Asa Kisoilas Nikia, until he made it like fine flour without any imperfections. Ba'ala. Now, Emar, as we start the first wide line on Daf Samach Tesam and Beis, there's a lot of learning, Rabbi say. This parak has a lot of big dafin and a lot of fascinating gemaras. And remember, for every word we learn, we get a separate mitzvah saseh. So we're really cashing in, and let every word that we learn be a protection for a soldier, be the healing for one who is sick. There's a lot of people who are wounded and mutilated. They should get better and get back to their lives. The poor Yisayimim, that both parents died. Hashem should help the children. Imar. Abaya Amar Olume Elehem Tanan. Abaya says that they went up on their own. Ezra didn't have to force these people to go up. They went up on their own, all of these 10 categories. The Rav Amar Helim Tanan. He took them against their will. The Kamifligi bid Rabbi Lazar. The Amar Rabbi Lazar Loyala Ezra Mebavel at She'asa Keselis Nakia, until he made it fine flour, va'ala. So Abaya, who says that they went up on their own, less later Rebbe Lazar. Abaye doesn't hold of a Rabbi Lazar, because according to Abaye, they went up on their own. So that means that he didn't tell those that didn't want to go to go. It's not likely that everybody went up on their own. So the Rava is like the Rebbe Lazar. Rava holds like Rebbe Lazar that he forced everybody to go. You got to go. Iba Yisema the Kuli Alma Yislu the Rebbe Lazar. Everybody holds the Rebbe Lazar. Once Ezra identified them, so then they didn't want to stay anymore. They said, look, now they identified us as mamzerim, then they want to say, let's go to another land where our hopes are better. Iba Yisema the Kuli Alma Yislu the Rebbe Lazar. That all Ezra had to do was to separate them, and then so then they went up on their own. Then no, still some wanted to stay, and Balkarchan Askinu, you had to bring them up against their will. That they went up on their own. All lands are do to Eretz Yisrael. That means all other lands, like Asia, right? All other lands, Persia, where there are Yidden, it's like dough. The pedigree is mixed up compared to Eretz Yisrael. The Eretz Yisrael Isa L'Bavel. Eretz Yisrael is perfect. Eretz Yisrael is mixed dough L'Bavel. Why? Because since they went up on their own, so in Eretz Yisrael we don't know who they are. Elamandia Mehelam, that he brought them against their will, so then they were known already in Eretz Yisrael also, that since they were forced to come up, so then in Eretz Yisrael it should be clear, Eretz Yisrael should be the same thing as Bavel. Because in Eretz Yisrael we know who the different sectors are. Maybe Adinu, we know about them. So Eretz Yisrael shouldn't be Isa L'Bavel, it shouldn't be mixed. It should be as clear as Bavel. Says the Gemara, yeah, but Nehei Diyodei Lahu Dara, even though this generation knows, L'Dara Achmina Lo Yodei, the next generation already they get mixed up. So Bavel, where they removed the pedigree, is good. Eretz Yisrael, where they're brought, the next generation has a mixture of all these 10 types of people. Bishlam Elamandi Ama Olu Hainu Dechsiv Vekaptse Melanor Haba El Ava. I gathered them, Ezra said, I gathered them to the river that came to Ava, V'nachnu Sham Yomim Shloisha, and they camped there 3 days. Vavina Ba'amu Ba'kahanim, and I inspected the nation and the Kahanim, Umebnei Levi Lo Matzasi Sham, and I didn't find Leviim there. So that could be because since they came up on their own, and he didn't have to force anybody up, so he didn't realize that he didn't have Leviim. Elamandi Amahelam, that he brought everybody up, so then he knew who he was bringing up, so then why didn't he see that there was no Levi? He was careful, so then why didn't he see there was no Levi? So my answer is simple, he was careful about the Psulim. He didn't take note of everybody else. Hey, there's dar b'psulim, but b'ksheim lo yizdar, and he didn't notice that there were no Leviim. Now we're going to see there were Leviim, but he was looking for Leviim to be able to sing in the Beis Hamikdash. There were a group of Leviim that were very God-fearing, and they were afraid that Nebuchadnezzar would make them play to idols. So they bit off their thumbs, so they wouldn't be able to play the musical instrumentation. They mutilated themselves. That's what we talk about in Al Naris Bavel, lamenting these Kahanim. So those Kahanim went, but not other Kahanim. He was looking for Kahanim to play the Shira in the Beis Hamikdash. This is what we learned earlier in the Masechta, that because they didn't come, they were penalized, that the Maisa was not given to them, instead it was given to the Kahanim. Now the Mishnah says, Kahane Leviya v'Yisrael minala desliku. How do we know that Kahanim, Leviim, and Yisrael went up? The Chsiv Vayeshva Kahanim v'Leviim u'mina'am. There dwelled the Kahanim, Leviim from the nation, v'Mashirim, the singers, v'Ashayirim, those that opened the gates, v'Nesiim ba'areim, v'Kol Yisrael ba'areim. So we know that Kahanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim were there. Chalole, Geirei, v'Charurei. So how do we know that there were people who were disqualified from the kahuna? How do we know that? Chalole minalan. So the Gemara tells us that Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Yossi Omer Gedola Chazaka. Great is a presumptive status. You know, presumptive status means that we rely on the last known definite situation. That's called the Chazaka. Now it says, Shenemo Mabnei HaKohanim, from the children of the Kohanim, Bnei Chavoya, Bnei Hakoitz, Bnei Barzilai, the children of Chavoya, of Hakoitz and Barzilai, Asher Lokach Mibnois Barzilai Agiladi Leisha, took from the daughters of Barzilai Agiladi as wives, V'Yikari Al Shmam, and they were known after their names. Now, Eila Bikshu Ksovim Amis Yachsim, they looked for their record of pedigree to prove that they didn't have any psul in their kahanic line, v'loy nimtzu, and it wasn't found. Now the Rishonim explain that there were kahanim that got mixed up with goyim that were converted. Now a kohen is not allowed to marry a ger. And if he does, the child is a cholol. And therefore, they didn't allow anybody to do avodah in the Beis Hamikdash unless he was able to prove that he didn't have a marriage with a convert. The Yagolu min hakuna, and these families were polluted from the kahuna. The Yomer Hatirshasa lahem. Now Hatirshasa was a very great man. Hatirshasa was Nehemiah ben Chachlaya. Ezra accomplished much of what he did because he had the strong arm of Nehemiah, who was the wine taster of Darius II, the king of Persia, Dayavish the Bey. Some say that he was Esther's son. Now, Nehemiah had very strong powers because he was very close to Darius, and therefore he was able to stop Chilul Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael and intermarriage. He wielded great power for the right reasons. He was called Hatirshasa because he was the wine taster of the king. So this is according to those that say that he wasn't a Yid, he was a guy, Darius. And he tasted the wines to make sure it's not poison. Every king had a wine taster. And he's not allowed to taste it because it's yayin of goyim. But because of the need to have somebody close to the king, they permitted him to drink the wine of goyim. That's why it's called Hatirshasa. Vayomer Hatirshasa lahem, and Nehemiah said to these questionable kahanim, Asher lo yoichlu mikodesh hakadoshim, you can't eat from the Holy of Holies, ad amod kayin l'urim v'tumim. Now they didn't have the urim v'tumim anymore in the second Beis Hamikdash, so this means until Mashiach comes, until the Kayin comes with the Urim V'Tumim that could flash with its letters of the Chayshin whether you're kosher or not. Now, V'amar lahem, he said, but in Bavel, you ate Truma. So V'amar lahem, Ari atem b'cheskaschem b'meh hayisim oichlem b'agayla, what you ate in the diaspora. So over there you ate b'kotche agvul, the kotchen that could be eaten out of the environs of Yerushalayim, and know it's truma. Afkan nami b'kotche agvul. So you can eat truma too, but you can't eat kotche. Says Gemara, but if they could eat truma, but there's a problem. That if somebody eats truma, we say he's a meyuchis. So then how could they eat truma? They might be assumed that they're miyuchas, but we said it could be that they're halalim. Says the Gemara, no, here we won't allow them to be assumed as miyuchas because we see that they're not allowed to eat kachim. Shani hasim, the reyach is kesayu. There's a reyasa in their chazaka because we're not allowing them to eat kachim. So the Gemara says, so then what do you mean gedayla chazaka? What's gedayla chazaka? Ve'elamai gedayla chazaka. Oh, it's very gadol the chazaka. Because beforehand, when they were in the diaspora, they only ate truma outside of Eretz Yisrael, which is truma d'Rabbanan. And now we're allowing them to eat truma d'Oraisa in Eretz Yisrael. The meikara achal b'truma d'Rabbanan, ula b'seif, and now achal b'truma d'Oraisa. We allow them to have truma d'Oraisa.
Well, that's an Isra Lisa.
What?
If they're not Kohanim, then that's a big avera.
No, that's gedayla, and that's gedayla chazaka. The Iba is saying, like Rabbi Kranz says, Rabbi Kranz is getting queasy. He doesn't like chazaka to be so big. The Iba is saying, La'olam hashtanami b'drabanan achal. They could only eat truma d'Rabbanan. B'doraisa lo yachal. They can't eat truma d'Oraisa. And therefore it's no kasha that we should say that because they ate truma, they should be a miyuchas, because v'chi maskin a truma liyuchsan, that's only midoraisa, truma d'Oraisa, midrabanan lo maskin. But if they're only eating truma d'Rabbanan, what's the gedoyla? Iachi mai gedoyla chazaka. What does it mean gedoyla chazaka? The meikara lekela migzah mishum truma d'Oraisa, because when they ate it in the diaspora, we don't have to worry that they might come to eat truma d'Oraisa. There's no truma d'Oraisa in Chutz La'aretz. Lebesayif, now when they're in Eretz Yisrael, I forgot the ikal migzah mishum truma d'Oraisa, that they might eat not just the truma of Paris and Yerakas, they might come to eat the truma of grain, which is d'Oraisa. Still we say b'drabanan achel, b'doraisa lo yachel. Says Gemara, but wait a second, you said they can't eat kachim, but the pasuk just says that they can't have kodesh kadashim. That implies only b'kodesh hakadashim u'dalayachel. They can only eat not kachim. Hakol midei nechel, but truma they could eat even if it's d'oraisa. Says no, haki kamar. Lo midei demikre kodesh. They can't eat something that's called kodesh. Truma is called kodesh. V'lo midei demikre kadashim, and that's the karbanas. Lo midei demikre kodesh. D'chsiv v'chol zar lo yochel kodesh. A non-kohen cannot eat truma. That's truma. V'lo midei demikre kadashim. The amakra ubas kohen ki siena leish zar. If a daughter of a kohen marries a Yisrael, so the din is that she can't eat truma. If the Yisrael dies and she has no children from the Yisrael, then she returns to eat truma from her father's house of kohen. But even though she returns to eat the truma, but she can't eat, a kohen gets the portion of the shlamim, the chaz of a sheik, the breast and the thigh. And the women can eat that. They can't eat kodesh kadashim from a chatas or an asham, but they could eat from kachim kalim. But not a girl who was married to Yisrael and then her husband died and she didn't have children. Because it says, He besrumas ha-kadashim lo yisaychel. V'amamar ba'murim min ha-kadashim. That which is removed for the kohen from kadashim, like the chaz and the shaykh, lo yisaychel, she can't eat. So you see, when it says you can't eat from the kodesh ha-kadashim, it means talking from truma d'oraisa also, because kodesh is the truma d'oraisa, and kadashim is the kachim. Wow, what a big job. As we get on to another wonderful week of Daf Yomi, we're going to learn now the Mishnah Yomis, which is not a picnic, it's not easy, with Truma V'Tara, but it's going to be a picnic compared to, like Aaron said, when we get to Yavamis, which is really going to be a job. 1 second, we want to Just change the machinery over here. Let's go like this. A good tavach.